Hello, everyone. This is Ben Dunn, founder of Tech Press, a comic book publishing company founded 1985. Creator of such comics as Warrior Nun, Ninja High School, Marvel Mangaverse, Tomorrow Girl, and a host of other comics. I do have a Kickstarter going called The Crimson Nun, written by Ron Fortier, the writer of such books as Hulk, Terminator, Green Hornet, and drawn by Jesse Thomas. It is a great all ages adventure, very much in the style of the pulp heroes of the past. And I think if you like action and adventure, I think you'd like Crimson Nun #1 Rebellion, which is now on Kickstarter and Fund My Comic. So I recently heard a lot of doom and gloom concerning comic book stores and comic industry in general. Well, I don't know. A lot of people are unfamiliar with how the direct market works. The direct market was an offshoot of a idea that someone had back in the 70s about getting comics directly from the publisher. Now, it used to be, and it's worked for 30, 40 years, that you had comic book publishers sell to newsstand distributors, and the newsstand distributors would put out the comics on newsstands and spinner racks and things like that, places where there were high traffic areas, and it worked relatively well, and but the problem is that you had to deal with returns. Now, what is a return? Well, a return is the unsold inventory that a comic publisher has to give credit to the newsstand distributor so that they get the next batch of comics. And if a book didn't sell well, then usually it was on the chopping block for cancellation. So, and how would they know? They would have to wait 3-4 months, to find out how well a comic book sold. Then so I got the bright ideas is, hey, I'm going to make a deal with you comic book publishers. If you sell direct to me, I will sell direct to comic book stores. Now, at the time, comic book stores weren't that many, but they were growing in number. People were starting to open comic book stores where all they sold was back issue comics. But someone got the bright idea, let's just sell new comics. Now, the main selling point was that there were no returns. And that really got publishers thinking about selling directly to the comic book store because, hey, once we sold that comic, we don't have to deal with any returns. We get the money right away, and we don't have to worry about any returns. So it was a very, tempting and lucrative idea that they glommed onto, and so the comic publishers agreed to these, so this started the direct distributor. Now, the direct distributor would handle the volume of comic book output that publishers would do, and then they would buy the comics from the publisher at a certain discount, and then they would discount the comic to the comic book store, and the comic book store would sell it directly to consumer based on the retail price. And that's how it worked for better part of 40 years for the most part. And it seemed to work okay. Well, there was a time when there were almost a dozen comic book distributors. Now, basically, there's only one. Now there are 3, but really there's only one. Diamond Direct, distribution, Penguin, and Lunar. Now, Penguin is mostly Marvel. I don't think they carry any other publishers, as far as I know. I could be wrong. But as far as I know, they're mostly distributing the Marvel. Lunar does DC and Image and most of others, but to get into Lunar is very difficult. They seem to have a very high standard for publishers to get into, and they very rarely get back to publishers who want to have their book distributed through them. I'm not sure how successful they are, but my impression is that if they're doing DC and Image, I you know I don't know. They may be doing great. They may not be doing so great. I don't know. I don't know. They won't release numbers. They won't release sales, so it's difficult to actually calculate how well they are doing. But eventually, the truth always comes out. If they're doing great, no problem. If they're doing badly, we'll soon see. You know. So everything was working fine for a while until, Marvel and DC were experiencing huge profits because of direct sales, because they didn't have to deal with inventory or returns. That was the onus was all on the distributor and on the comic book store, mostly on the comic book store, because the comic book store would buy it at a discount, but then if it was unsold, they had to deal with the unsold inventory, and usually they either got rid of it at a lower discounted price, or they just kept it as a back issue, storing it in their back somehow, you know. So it was that situation until Marvel got the bright idea to go ahead and distribute it on their own back in the 90s, the mid 90s. Of course, Image came out and was a direct threat to Marvel. Really, Marvel had nothing to worry about because Image was an editorial mess. And they were not experienced in publishing. They were creators trying to act like publishers, and they probably had very little experience in actual publishing. So while initially they had great success, without editorial leadership, they eventually floundered and went their separate ways. And some of them actually went back to Marvel. And Image, of course, changed their business model and didn't focus as much on the founders' output as opposed to just relying on independent creators. And now they're mostly known as an independent creator company and not a direct competitor to Marvel or DC. They're, I guess all of us are sort of direct competitors to Marvel and DC if you publish comics, but let's be honest. Marvel and DC are mostly superheroes, and most of the other comic book publishers are creator-owned or indie titles, which is fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. Well, anyway, the Marvel, like Image, thought they were a distributor, and they found out very quickly that they had no idea what they were doing, and they crashed and burned. Unfortunately, the end result was that because Marvel decided to distribute on their own, all the distributors panicked, and they made exclusive deals with publishers, and that's really spelt the beginning of the end of the direct market. Because, before, the direct market was very healthy because you had competition. You had distributors vying for the product the publishers were putting out, servicing large number of stores. Everyone was doing great. People were making money, but then eventually someone always gets too greedy and starts bringing the rest of everyone down. And so when everyone went exclusive, distributors were scrambling to sign up publishers. But let's face it, other than Marvel and DC, the other publishers really didn't matter that much in the grand scheme of things. We were offered exclusivity, yes, and Art Press was offered exclusive, but I turned it down. I thought to myself, this is wrong. Exclusivity is wrong, and it's bad for the industry. It took 30 years, but I've been proven correct in my assessment. Because when you have exclusivity, you stifle competition. And when you stifle competition, then you're not allowing it to grow. It pretty much becomes sort of a semi-monopoly. Now, don't get me wrong. I think Diamond's a great distributor. There's a lot of fantastic people there, and they do a fairly good job. I know comic retailers carouse and complain, and because let's face it, if you're only game on the block, you can pretty much do whatever you want. Where else are you gonna go, huh? Where else can you go? No place. You can buy directly from the publisher, but that's such a pain in the butt. Most retailers want to take the path of least resistance, and that's what they'll usually do. Now, for a while, that seemed to work okay, but eventually it became, I guess, comic book retailers became over reliant on Marvel and DC. And when you're over reliant on one, you know, particular product mix, what happens when that product starts to, lose its audience? Then you're pretty much stuck with that. Instead of trying to diversify and trying to attract a larger audience with different genres, different types of comics. I'm not saying that comic retailers are not short-sighted, but some of them can be. Some of them understand that a good product mix means that you have good product customers. You get mix of good customers who will come in to try to check out what the latest offerings you have. And if you give them more variety, they're more likely to come back and support your establishment. Now, if you only have one type of product mix, all you carry are superhero titles. What if you don't like superhero titles? If you're a romance buyer or a manga buyer or a western buyer or a war comic collector, you don't have much of a choice. There are genres out there that do appeal to a larger audience. Like Anarch Press does war comics. We do romance titles. We do science fiction. We do manga and things like that. But apparently, it's hard for us to get that reach because comic retailers don't take our product line seriously. I don't know if that's just a mentality they have, or is that just they know their customers and they know that they won't buy that kind of material. Unfortunately now, it's become evident that some of the shift in the demographic and markets are becoming evident now in the way that people are buying, comics. And now we're seeing a industry, the direct comic industry, starting to stagnate and contract. And that's not a good thing. It is not a good thing for the direct comic industry as a whole. You don't want to see contraction. You want to see expansion. You want to know that there are more and more people coming in to buy comics. But unfortunately, that's not the case. And we're seeing more and more comic stores close and open. It's like the population. There was a panic back in the 70s that we were going to have overpopulation and that the earth could not sustain itself. And so we took measures to try to curb population growth. And now we're experiencing depopulation, especially in the Western world, civilized, in the first world, we're seeing fewer and fewer births. And that cannot be sustainable because as the population grows older, who's going to help support the older population? When there are fewer people who are being productive. Now, argument can be said that AI and robots will eventually take over a lot of the menial tasks that were once performed by humans. We haven't got there yet, but the technology is changing very quickly. Especially in areas that require very little education or experience. So if you are a worker that does tasks that are menial or require very little education, then those are most likely going to be replaced by, robots and AI. So just be forewarned that is coming. And I guarantee it's not if, it's when. And the technology is going faster and faster. Now, the thing about the comics is that comics is still relatively a small niche part of the entertainment industry. And a lot of creators and publishers can survive on very low print runs. Anarch Press is a good example of that. We're not saying we're wildly successful, but we do all right to stay above water. And for us, as long as you're above water, you lived another day, you know. And we are very reliant on creators, you know, to make sure that we have a sustained output of material. Now, you know, should there come a total collapse of the comic industry, believe it or not, Anarch Press is prepared for that. We have a plan B. You know, there is a plan in place for Anarch Press should the comic industry totally collapse. Now, you know, there's a lot of people saying that it will, and I'm hopeful that it won't, because if I know something's wrong, then I will do everything I can to fix it before it happens. Why are we letting the knowledge that things are bad just be that way? Sometimes you can find success in the greatest adversities. The fact is that there's lots of examples in history where people thought that it was the end, and somehow they pulled out. They somehow were able to, through tenacity, sheer willpower, the ability to not give up under any circumstance, that somehow they pulled victory out of defeat. And it can be done. I refuse to believe that the comic industry is going to go away. I think that it can be revitalized. It can be healthy once again, if you give reason for people to go back into comic stores. If there's things that give them a reason to want to go back, to be aware that the content that's being created will attract a new customer base. People have poo-pooed my idea of spinner racks, and maybe I am living in a fantasy world. Maybe if spinner racks are no longer viable, but some people have said, oh, it's just not worth it. But you think about it for a little bit. If Marvel and DC spent just a small portion of their budget to create awareness in spinner racks and things like that, to extend their outreach, there could be a very real possibility that people will come back to it. Maybe people are just not even aware comics are being printed, that are even available. That somehow they're just gone the way of the dodo bird. Who knows? It's just one of those things. It's all about accessibility. If people don't see it, okay, then they won't buy it. You got to give them. It's got to be right in front of their faces for them to begin with, for them to buy the product. It'd be the same as if you go to a supermarket and you don't see any cans of tomato soup. If you don't see the cans of tomato soup, what are you to assume? That they're all gone? That they don't no longer make tomato soup anymore? It's just one of those things, is that it's if you don't let people know that it's available, then they're going to assume it's not available. So it's to me, it's not so much about the viability of spinner racks. It's just the visibility of it. Just to see it in front of you means that a lot of people are at least going to check it out. Especially, I think kids will want to check it out because they'll see all those bright colors. They'll see a lot of things that might be of interest to them. And it just I think that's what's really the most important thing. And hopefully, if they like something and it's priced cheap enough, it will be an impulse buy, and they'll take it home and read it and reread it and reread it again and again and again. That's the good thing about comics. You don't have to rely on an expensive phone or a computer or even electricity. You can, take a comic book, roll it in your back pocket, take it anywhere, read it over and over and over again, share with your friends, talk about the stories, show them the stories, and that's just the kind of things that connect people with other people. So anyway, the way that before I get too off topic, the way that the direct comic book industry works is that usually 3 months in advance we send in what we're offering that month, that particular month, and then 2 months before It's released. We They put out the catalog and retailers get their order in, and then 1 month before release we get the orders, and then we ship the book, and then the book should be out in comic stores the month that it's supposed to be released. So that's how it usually works. And then as far as the discount, usually, and I'm not sure, it's not every case, but in Antarctic Press's case, it's usually we have to give distributors between 60 to 65% off retail in order for us to sell to distributors. And I don't know how much the comic stores get, but usually it's between, I think, 30 to 50%, depending on the volume of material that that particular retailer buys. And then on that margin, comic book stores have to sell the title directly to consumer at retail, and hopefully sell enough of that particular title to make a profit. If it's unsold inventory and just sits on the shelf, that's money that retailer has lost. So he has to pick very carefully what he's going to order because it's non-returnable. They cannot return it if it's unsold. They're stuck with the inventory, and that's usually how it works. Now, a lot of times they make money selling as a back issue. They sell for $1 or $2. They're still making a little bit of money, not much, but they're still making a little bit if they sell it. So that is one. But unfortunately, it takes a while for that particular title, to move. But anyway, I hope that answers some of your questions about how the direct market works and whether or not it can be saved. I don't know. The future is unpredictable, especially in this particular economic and political climate. It's hard to predict, how things will go, But we as a company are prepared for whatever is inevitable. We always like to have a backup plan whenever we can, and we always discuss about other things that we can do because we do have a lot of connections. We can pivot if we have to. Or the other option is just say, hey, we had a good run. Maybe it's time to move on. And that's definitely another option. But we do feel like we are prepared. We know if the comic book industry recovers, fantastic. If it does experience a total collapse, then we are ready for it. So until next time, if you like what you've heard, please like and subscribe. Again, the link for the Crimson Nun Kickstarter will be below. And until next time, this has been Dunn signing off.